29 million people have been affected by this winter storm in Texas. Um, and Without a doubt, there will be more flooded homes from this than there were from Harvey. Trevor can speak to this. And by the way, Trevor, thank you for changing your name there. I think you used my login, and so it said you were Godfrey, but you don't want to wear that mantle. Um, it might scare the bishop to death to know there are two Godfreys in a conference. One's needed, right? But as far as the damage, probably the cost of damage and the extent of damage per home will not be the same as from Harvey, but I think the total damage is going to exceed that. Harris County did an informal survey of their own engineering department and found that homes that had 10%, only 10% of the homes that were plumbed with the new PEX piping, the new PEX product, um, which expands, only 10% of those homes suffered any damage. But 60% of the homes that used galvanized, copper, or PVC had busted pipes within that department. That is a huge percentage. We're talking about now well in excess of 60% of that department had busted pipes. And these are engineers. And so we can expect millions and millions of homes with busted pipes. Um, that also leads us to say something that, you know, galvanized was really used mostly before 1975. And that's the one that is producing the most problems. And so, and those are also the homes that are most prevalent in the vulnerable communities. And so as you look to see who you can help in your communities, you might want to start by looking after you take care of your own congregation and their neighbors into communities that have been around longer, that started before 1975. Trevor will talk about some of the things we need to be careful in that regard as well. So Kip, if you don't mind sharing a screen with Sonia, she has some slides that we want to run through, because I know as you know, pastor at Foundry for 34 years and going through 500-year floods in that period, it really is hectic afterwards, and we want to hurry up and meet. We see so many people in need. We want to hurry up and get to them and to start helping them. This is going to be a little different because we have not had this before, and some of the rules that we have for other disasters, like the bishop already mentioned, some of those rules need to be looked at differently for this one. So you'll notice there are two brands there. Texas Congregation Disaster Readiness is not another organization. It is simply the program that we created for disaster readiness, which TAC subscribes to. That is our program that we use, but there are other organizations and denominations that use it as well. And it was created by Trevor and Sonia and me and a few others. So let's talk a little bit about how to respond. And we're going to divide this up into the immediate response versus the long-term response. And Kip, if there are any questions, are you going to monitor that so one of us
Yes.
could address those as they come up?
Yes, thank you, Godfrey. I've posted in our chat. Feel free to do a check-in shout out through the chat feature, and also any comments you want to add during the course of this for flowing conversation. Any questions you have that you want to be addressed, use the Q&A function on the screen, and I'll monitor those. And then as time is appropriate, I'll insert those and ask one of you to respond to that.
Okay, thank you, Kip.
Mhm.
So let's talk about how our congregations can respond immediately, like starting this weekend, things you can talk about tomorrow from the pulpit, whether you're on Zoom or or live. What we want to do is help, and what we encourage is help your own members first. That's where you're going to find out who needs help. And probably from there, you're going to also get to help their neighbors as well and the surrounding community. That's what we would recommend you do for the next week. Get your members cleaned up and so on. And then when that is done, we recommend that you then make a very intentional move towards the most vulnerable communities in your area. We're not going to be able to manage this in a central, do some central management or top-down management because we have 57 or 60 counties and they all have different long-term disaster recovery organizations. And the resources are different and every county operates a little differently. So we really encourage you to make sure you have a disaster readiness coordinator at your church, that you appoint one, that they get to know the Office of Emergency Management, that they get to know the long-term disaster recovery, that they get to know the representatives from Red Cross, Salvation Army, and really do some cross pollinating there so that because the more people you know, every intersection you make, you'll find it will lead to others. So how to help in the next few days? First of all, we want to offer compassionate care to the community. And so Sonia, would you say a few words about that, please?
Sure, I'll be glad to. This compassionate care, most of us know compassionate care in terms of helping people, being an empathetic ear, praying with them, helping them to address the spiritual, emotional needs. But another role of the compassionate care community canvassing could be things as simple as some of those that are listed on the list there by the bullet. So you could assist them in documenting damage. A lot of your elderly may not have smartphones and may not have a way to take photos of their damage, and insurance companies highly recommend that. So even things as simple as helping them to document the damage, take photos, maybe even meeting with an elderly person when the insurance adjuster comes out so that you can then prompt with some questions and assist that homeowner. And then another idea might be to direct them to resources that they might need. If there's two, and we'll cover it in a couple slides toward the end, but there's two different ways that people can register their need. They can register their damage on one of the sites that we have listed, and that's an online or a call-in phone number for those who don't have internet access. And then there's another one for crisis cleanup for them to log their damages if they need assistance, if they don't have the resources, they don't have the means to repair their homes, clean up what needs to be cleaned up. There's a way for them to log in those things. And sometimes the elderly especially might need assistance with that.
Thank you, Sonia. And so one of the ways your church can get engaged immediately is if you have Stephen ministers or people who are compassionate and have a good way of communicating with people without preaching at them or giving them pithy answers, but people who truly can be helpful emotionally, send them out by twos, properly protected COVID-wise, to just walk the neighborhoods and see how people are doing. Share a little information, gather some information about what's available in your county, about crisis cleanup and so on, and then make do some canvassing, possibly by phone or in person. Beyond that, once you get to their house, if you have teams that want to go and help in physical ways, one important thing is some people don't know how to shut off their water. It's just going to help them shut off their water properly, or if it has been shut off, to turn it on in a responsible way, because you don't want to just Trevor, would you say a word about how to turn on water if you've had frozen pipes and you want to find out if there is damage or not?
Sure. Hi, thanks for inviting me along here to share what knowledge I might be able to lend assistance in. So hopefully people's water, if they have leaks, is already shut off. But if somebody had their water turned off and or have left the property and are just now coming back home to identify. There's usually two ways you turn water off. It's either out along the street or at the city's water meter or valve. And you'll typically need some sort of key or a wrench. You can use something like this. This is a key T handle situation. At the valve, you can twist that, or there's a valve on the side of the house, and they can that's usually frequently on older homes is going to be frozen up from it may not work anymore. It may. Don't force it, open or close, because then it could break. But I also know a lot of the churches here are in more rural congregations, and so it could be an issue with a well pump. And so identifying if there's power to that and how to handle that. Usually your homeowners with wells are aware of that and have that. So there's several different ways to do that. But if you're in the city and you want to turn your water back on at the valve or at the meter, and then just have somebody in the home listening for leaks, for any pipes that have busted. I know that there's been several instances where the water's turned back on, full pressure has returned, or hasn't returned, and then when full pressure does return, that overwhelms the plumbing system and causes some bursts to happen. Just today, we've had a couple of experiences where the water was turned on yesterday. There weren't any issues to be had, and then somehow it got overwhelmed and did end up breaking. So you want to be careful with that as well. I don't know why that's happening, but it is on some of these older homes. So just the thing is being showing an abundance of caution, and making sure that if you are sending out volunteers to homes that they are familiar enough with how to handle some of those situations and aren't potentially causing more harm than good. That's our main focus. Is we don't really want to create more harm than good.
So Trevor, two very quick questions. Is it useful to have some faucets open when you're turning the water main on?
Yeah. So you want to keep your faucets open to allow any air and debris to move through the system. That's gonna help prevent from overpressuring potential weak joints or that sort of thing, and overwhelming with them again. So yeah, keep the faucets on when you're turning it back on, because there's going to be water. There's probably going to be some sediment in the line. Another common thing is, like on most of your sink faucets, you have an aerator, and that aerator is going to capture a lot of junk, debris from the line. So if you're experiencing low pressure at the faucet, just go ahead and turn off the water, unscrew those aerators. You might need to use a wrench. You might be able to do it by hand, and clean those aerators out. You're going to see little pebbles and stones in there, debris that's probably going to clog that up if you're experiencing issues like that.
Well, thank you, Trevor. And so that's one way that you can help, is going through your helping people shut off and check for damage. If they do have damage, then what we want to do is document the damage. And I would use paper to write, document in writing and with pictures for people, help them do that. If they're elderly, help them find, if they need to sometimes they need help with getting in touch with their insurance companies, because their phones are always busy during these times, and they might need help doing it so online. And then when you clean up and dry out, for your members who've been trained in muck and gutting, this is a little different than a typical flood muck and gut, because we do not have contaminated water in your house. And so carpets, unless they were absolutely saturated, and furniture, and there may be some things that can be salvaged. So we don't have to throw everything out just because it got wet. It got wet with clean water. Um, and so as far as the cleanup then, what we want to do is discourage from just ripping the wet sheetrock out right now, because when it freezes in 2 nights from now, they're not going to be able to heat up their homes, and they're going to freeze that night. So we have to do some mucking without a lot of gutting. And Trevor, you've been doing that now for a couple of days. Would you just maybe address that a little bit too?
Sure. Yeah. Our primary focus. So for the last few days, since Thursday, we've been sending teams out to help people that have gotten helping people that have gotten damage clean up. So we see a lot of ceilings that have fallen in and collapsed, and then the water's run down walls and that sort of thing. Our primary focus is to assist in the cleaning up of that mess. So we're not performing any repairs as the restoration team at this time. And a lot of that's because of the nature of the event with busted pipes, that's covered by the majority of homeowners insurance. And so we want the homeowners insurance to take care of the repairs and the damage as best as possible. So we don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the claim. The insurance company can find a reason to deny the claim they're going to. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting the homeowner and allowing them to feel loved, not be overwhelmed anymore, give them assistance as the church, but also allow the insurance to take care of the bulk of the issue. So what we're focusing on is the cleaning up. Now, you also want to get the house dry. So you want to remove all of the wet material, insulation, drywall. On some of your hard floors or even carpets that did get wet, you may be just popping out the baseboard. So removing the baseboard, you might damage some of the sheetrock, but we saw this morning that through the whole house had about an inch or so of water in it, but it had already started to weep up a couple of feet into the drywall. And so we want to make sure that the drywall is drying out and has that. So removing the baseboards is a way that you can prevent any more moisture from wicking into the drywall and allows it to possibly dry out. We're not too concerned with mold yet at this point. Depending on where you are in the conference, it's not heating up enough for mold to start growing at a dangerous rate. In Houston along the coastline, it is going to get warmer in the next couple of days, but it's also going to be cooler. So mold doesn't start growing until about 70, 75 degrees. We have a couple of days before that's going to set in. So we're not too concerned about that right now. But allowing airflow to come in, and like Godfrey mentioned, we're not really gutting as much as just helping muck. So helping get the wet stuff out, lift the furniture up off the floor, allow air to come in and dry that out, put fans on it, put dehumidifiers in the rooms, that sort of thing, and document everything. I was going through a house this morning with a moisture meter. It's a $25 tool that you can get at most hardware stores. It looks like this, and anything above 18% humidity is a cause for concern. And so documenting that now for the insurance companies, taking a picture of the moisture meter on the walls to show, because they may not get out for a couple weeks or a few days, they may dry out by that time. So if you have something like that, you can document, say, hey, yeah, there was moisture in these walls and they need to be addressed as well. So each event is different, each house and the way the water moves through it. Water finds the path of least resistance, and that's where it's going to go. So it may go behind walls, behind cabinets, through corners you didn't expect it to. That's just part of the game of finding the damage.
And one more thing we have to be cautious about if we're dealing with working in homes that are a little older, asbestos is a concern. And so be sure to have some N95 masks for anybody who is doing the cleaning to wear. I would wear it automatically if I was in a home that was 50 years old or older. Is that a good rule, Trevor? Rule of
Yeah,
thumb?
so asbestos is used, it was very popular prior to 1972, I think, 74 is when they quit using it. You might fact check me on that later. But it's pretty common in your popcorn ceilings. Um, if the ceilings have had damage and have fallen. What I did learn last year is that in the state of Texas, asbestos is not regulated. Cleanup of asbestos is not regulated in residential areas. So as long as you are wearing the proper PPE, N95 or P100 masks or better, gloves and that sort of thing, you can clean it up and double bag it to get it out of the home and prevent it from causing an issue to the homeowner. So it is a cause for concern, but not overly concerned. It's something we want to be aware of. But yeah, so your homes that are pre-1970, you definitely want to be aware of that if they haven't been remodeled or anything of that nature. That's just
That's
something to be
not
aware
just
of.
in the ceiling, because kitchen floors can have asbestos in them too, if you're going to rip that. And so we would recommend, don't, at this point, let's not be ripping up floors. But
Yeah,
be
I would remove
careful.
carpet and paddings just to get the moisture out of the home. But hard floors, that sort of thing, I would leave until a professional is able to take a look at it.
Okay. And the carpet, if it's not too wet, can be saved. So, and that's the homeowner, it's always the homeowner's, it's their home, so they make their decisions, right? So let's remember rule number one. I think we can attribute this to John Wesley, can we not, Bishop? Do no harm. And so after Harvey, there was a lot of harm done by volunteers who were well-meaning and just did much more than was necessary, such as removing toilets because it had contaminated water in them, which I just can't figure out that rationale. They're made to hold contaminated water. But Trevor and I bought a lot of toilets to put in homes where they shouldn't have been removed. So do no damage. Don't do more. If in question, do less, not more. And be less aggressive than you would after a flood event. Sheetrock, just because it was wet doesn't mean it has to be removed. Sometimes it can dry. And so just go at it a little more cautiously. Mold concerns, Trevor already addressed. And so the one thing I would say is encourage your homeowners to set their thermostat lower than normal to inhibit mold growth. I would keep mine, if we were wet in our house, I would keep mine in about 64, 65 degrees and just bundle up to prevent mold from getting started. Could we get the next slide, Sonia, please? So how to report damages, and we're getting close to the end here. Very often what we want to do is just put it out there on social media and everywhere else. If you need any assistance, let us know. Folks, everybody, at least 60% of the state of Texas will need assistance, according to this informal survey. And so of one kind or another, it will overwhelm you if you put it out there in the community. If you need help, contact us. And so every organization, including our faith-based recovery groups, we're working with Crisis Cleanup. That is a statewide web platform where homeowners can report their damage and request for help. And then any organization that is in your area, whether it's your church, whether it's Hope or Restoration or any organization, including Rubicon, SBP, they can go on Crisis Cleanup, pull out the addresses out of it and go to work. That's how it works, right, Sonia? So,
Yes.
and there are two ways to report on Crisis Cleanup, or is it only by phone?
Only by phone.
Okay, so the phone number, I would share this with your congregation. It's 844-965-1386. And any organization that is in disaster work is then free to go on there and take out certain addresses and then go address those. I would be very careful to warn all of your members about scams. There's some very clever ones going on right now. FEMA has discovered that somebody was going around in FEMA jackets a couple of days ago saying, I just want, we're in the neighborhood, want you to know that you qualify for help, but we need to get your social security number and your direct deposit so you can get help. Really caution your folks to double check who they're letting into their house. And when you go into a house, by the way, to help them, I would have a written form of some kind, even if it's handwritten, that they give permission for you to go in and help clean up. You want that to protect your church and protect you. Get a informal, if you want a form, Sonia or Trevor can get you forms we use, but I really encourage you to use a simple form that can give you some protection. And then the one thing, if we could go on the previous page, Sonia, real quick, the one that the state, Texas DEM. So the state of Texas is asking everyone who's had damage to go on this webpage and report that damage, because that's how the state gets reimbursed by FEMA. Every home that's on there is worth something in help. And so if we really want the full amount of resources to help us through this, let's encourage all of our members, even if they don't need help, to report to Texas Department of Emergency Management. It's a self-reporting survey. Now, they're not going to send any help. That is only to report the damage. Crisis cleanup is where you go to report damage. And if you have church members and others that say they need help, just help them get on crisis cleanup as a first step. All right, next, how to assist. If you have members that want to help for right now, because every area is affected, just help yourselves, help your community. And so just work with your church, coordinate with other churches, coordinate with the county, with other nonprofits, and just work in your local area. If you're at some point ready to send volunteers to come work in Houston or somewhere else, if there's an area that's especially hard hit, Christine Riggle at our Mission Depot, her email is listed there. She's the one that you can address all the questions to, and also in regard to serving and making yourself available to serve. Let me also say, if your church has been damaged, Bishop, how should churches report damage to their own buildings or parsonages?
District superintendents have been contacting pastors to compile a list. We've got a spreadsheet going of the damage we know about. And again, working with each church to see what insurance coverage they have. And in some cases, members have shown up. Jim Bass sent me an email that at Friendswood, 50 of the members showed up to broom water out of the various places that had been flooded. So keep in touch with your district superintendent and we'll figure out how to be helpful.
Okay. And so I think, was that the last slide? We already addressed this. Leave the scam one up here for a second, if you would, please. Do we have a place, Sonia, where they report scams?
Actually, it's on that link. And in these slides to Kip. So these, where I have a link, it's an active link. They can click on it and go to the websites.
Okay.
Sonia, Jenny Ferris asked about the slide that has the crisis hotline. It's also on our conference website at txcumc.org/Texas Recovers, has on it links for the crisis reporting, also has on it the how to donate. So go to the conference website and there are links there already. I'm not sure when we'll be able to get these slides themselves up, but we will be working on that once the weekend's over.
Yeah, and we are currently editing the slide of how to get help, because right now it has a link to crisis cleanup, which is not really how to get help. I think they prefer, Sonia, to do a phone interview.
Yes.
So that's why we have a hotline that gives more of a opportunity for interaction. So
Right.
we're replacing the text on that current page to read, please call or listen to hotline. I've just communicated to our communications team on that. So that will be edited here within probably before our webinar is over.
Perfect, because it's confusing. If they click on that link, it's a registration page for the organizations, not the individuals.
But if on that page is the phone number, the crisis hotline is in the upper right-hand corner of that. Just tell people to call the number and don't register an organization unless you have an organization.
Right, yes, sir. So Godfrey, the only two things I wanted to mention was just, I get good information just because I'm local here to Harris County. So I get good information on Houston and Harris County. But in some of the other counties within TAC, I don't have as much information. So if any of your pastors have resources that you want me to help communicate, and then also Christine to help communicate, if you'll send us those, we can post them on our social media pages.
Very good. So since July, when we rolled out the TXCDR program, we have done 26 or 2,700 hours of training. Yes, 2,700 hours of training, and trained over nearly 1,600 people. Not one of those trainings was on pipe repairs, because we never thought we would have single digit temperature, right? And so we, Trevor and I are working with SBP and Habitat for Humanity to create a training video for volunteers on how to repair broken pipes. We hope to get that rolled out within a week, at most two. But you're not going to be able to repair a lot of pipes anyway. Trevor's run out of parts. Everybody's running out of parts. And we had one of our supervisors went to Home Depot the other day to pick up some parts in bulk for their repairing pipes. And he was he was accosted and almost mugged by a bunch of plumbers who accused him of hurting their income. And so be careful when you buy. Don't go and take them all and get people mad at you. But Trevor is looking at, as we are, at how we can buy fittings and pipes and the things we need in bulk, and then we could distribute them. Once a training is done, we can distribute them to the various groups that are doing pipe repair throughout the annual conference.
And Godfrey, you had mentioned that you were getting kind of a wish list set up through Amazon on some of this stuff. Can you say a little bit more about that, or is that something that's, where is that?
Well, we learned a lot after Laura, Hurricane Laura, because we did some supply drives in the traditional way. I call them the 20th century type supply drives, where churches collect them, and then we send a truck and load it up, send it to the next church and load it up. And Sonia was overwhelmed. Eventually, we sent 11 semi-truckloads to South Louisiana and East Texas. We found just putting a link in social media to say, here's a wish list, like a bridal registry or a wish list that we do for birthdays, and say, here's what we need. people from around the country can then go on that Amazon account and buy it, and it gets shipped. We don't even have to pay for shipping or storage in that case. And so we're going to have a list. I asked Trevor a little while ago to put together a list for us. He already has one. He's going to share it with us. Then Sonia will create an account, a special fund where anybody can go on that Amazon account and buy whatever supplies are there at any quantity, and they'll be shipped to us.
Okay, great. Great. That's helpful. And we'll upload that information to our conference webpage too, as soon as that's ready to go. Linda Davis had a question on here that she had mentioned that they wanted to know, is there a list of members from our various churches who are licensed professionals to whom we could refer? She mentioned that her church was looking for someone to sanitize the building, called a particular company, found out that the guy was a lifelong United Methodist, who was very helpful and been receiving referrals to other pastors as well when they need work. So do we have any of that kind of list of who folks can call through either Hope Disaster Recovery or through our conference or TXCDR?
We don't have a list of referrals like that. What I would recommend is get referrals from your insurance adjuster, because normally they're going to want to send somebody, or go on Google and do a reviews and pick them out according to reviews.
Okay.
Because if we get into the referral business and somebody does a poor job, you know, we really want to be careful about making referrals.
Right. And of course, you can do what we've been doing for most of our lives, is certainly buddy up. And if you've got, you know, someone, in fact, my daughter and son-in-law had a pipe bust on them this week. And the neighbor down the street said, well, we use this person. And so they got somebody out last night. So I think that continues to work. Better to work again in a decentralized and localized fashion in your church than it is on a conference level, where the people that we would refer you to, we know so much less than someone in your own congregation might know. Melissa Brigman asked if there's a list of Texas Conference churches that have major damage. We are in the midst of compiling that list now. We have an ongoing list that the cabinet is going to review, I think on Monday. Is that right, Bishop?
Yes.
And we'll have a chance to take a deeper look at the extent of that. What we do have is a spreadsheet going, and I think, Godfrey, you have access to that says these are the churches that have been hit with some broken pipes. And we have as a spreadsheet with 9 different tabs for each of the districts in the Texas Annual Conference.
Very good. I think this is the last thing that is on my agenda to communicate.
So before you hit your last thing, then
we'll have the final thing, and then
I'm going to invite our attendees to go ahead and submit any questions you have as we start wrapping up this presentation. I want to be able to launch right into some more questions. So go ahead, Godfrey.
We are identifying plumbers. Right now, we're not going to ask plumbers to volunteer right now. This is, it's like roofers after a hurricane. They have their clients to take care of, but there may be disabled plumbers who can't climb into attics anymore, but know the skills very well. Or there may be retired plumbers that are willing to be a resource for our volunteers when we at last do go out to start repairing pipes in our most vulnerable communities, so that when our volunteers run into a situation, they can actually FaceTime with the plumber and get some technical direction, because Trevor is going to be way too busy to handle all those calls. So we really would like to have, if you have a plumber in your church who's retired and would like to do that a few days a week for the foreseeable future, 1 or 2 or 3 days a week when there's a need, Boy, that would be a great help. Just knowing that before I think I'm doing this right, but I really would like a plumber to take a look at it and say, yeah, it's good, turn the water on. Or no, I would do it differently. So let us know, again, Sonia or Christine Riggle, let them know if you know of plumbers who are willing to help that way, or if they're retired and would like to come and do some mission work.
Great. Are there any other questions that y'all have? I want to revisit a few things here. One is, how to get help. So when I'm typing this into our chat function right now. How to get help? Call Crisis Cleanup, and that's their number there. If you want to know how to give help, so you're ready to send a team, or you've got a team from your church, you've got people that are highly qualified in this area, then what you want to do is contact Christine Riggle, and that's the how to give help. And I'm going to post her info right here on our chat function. Gotta get to the right function here. Not that one, this one. So how to give help. You send an email to Christine Riggle and say, we'd like to help, and she'll get your list there, how many people have it, let her know what the skills are, anything else that we need to know about that, Godfrey, and just kind of recapping where we are on all of this.
Kip, let's not forget that in a crisis like this, sometimes the best help is to send money. We have a disaster response account at the conference, and so there is an online function at the conference website where an individual can give. But if your church wants to have a special offering this Sunday, we'd be glad to have the money come into the conference office. I want to give a shout out to UMCOR. In a disaster like this, all it takes is a phone call from the bishop and an immediate grant of $10,000 is given. So I made that call Friday afternoon and was in touch with Roland Fernandez, the head of GBGM, and that money is coming into our conference soon. We do have some reserve money left over from old disasters, and we're deploying that quickly, and more money that comes in will be used to buy those supplies when they become available.
Thank you, Bishop. And if your congregation is ready to go and repair or assist folks in your county, in your area, in vulnerable communities, you could send the zip code to Sonia and say, Sonia, can you get us a list of addresses from Crisis Cleanup to the zip codes? You can do that for them, right, Sonia?
Yes.
So even though your church isn't a partner of Crisis Cleanup, we can get you the list of people who have signed up that you can go and help. But once we give those lists to you, please go help them, because we assume that when names have been pulled, they've been helped.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of questions related to Crisis Cleanup, and that is, if a church is impacted, if a church has damage, should they call Crisis Cleanup? And I think it's important to talk about what does Crisis Cleanup do? What does your insurance and their adjusters do? And is there an overlap?
Crisis Cleanup is simply for residents, homeowners,
Right.
to report damage to their homes. If you're in a rented home, I don't think you report a rented home to it, correct, Sonia? Just
There are some that report rent. We can only help with the cleanup with the rental property.
yes, please do not make any repairs or gut any rented properties. You can only clean their things, the homeowner, the renters' personal items, furniture.
You can do the cleanup and dry out,
Yes.
and let the homeowner tend to the rest of that.
So ask that question first, please. We had a church that they didn't see a need to do that, to have case management, and they just went into a community and started working. And they totally rebuilt this house and handed them the key and said, and had this wonderful handoff, great Hallmark, all of, the Hallmark kind of a moment. And when the lady got the key to her house, she said, "Oh, my landlord will be so pleased."
And KIPP, it's all type homes as well. So it could be mobile homes. It doesn't have to be what we consider a structured home, but it can be a mobile home as well.
Okay, thank you.
Let me clarify a little bit. So crisis cleanup is just the connector between those that need help and the organizations that can give the help. So crisis cleanup itself is not helping anybody. It's just a database where people request assistance, and then organizations like fill in the blank organization that can help people is then going there to assist, to receive those names of people. So not everybody that needs help is going to be on crisis cleanup, but the more data there is there, the better it is, because then you have multiple organizations looking at it. So it's not just your church collecting a database and then being solely responsible for helping those folks. So as far as having churches apply to receive assistance through crisis cleanup, that is not its intent. And so that you're for anybody, regardless of homeowner or church, if you have homeowners insurance in this particular case, that should be your first call, and making sure that the insurance is going to do their due diligence first.
Okay. Thank you for Trevor for that, because I think that's a huge clarification, and it's a huge help to have one central database, so groups aren't running into each other and others are being neglected. It allows you to work through it right, but again, it's a connector between those who need help and those who give help, and your insurance, that's one of the reasons I think why crisis cleanup, as you call them, because one of the questions they're going to ask is, do you own the home? Is it insured? Who's your insurance provider? Have you called them? Have they sent an adjuster? And again, that's connecting you to the people who give help, which may be the more appropriate person than to have a church address it. And Godfrey, I think you or Trevor said that if a church goes in there and starts doing something that the insurance company was going to take care of, it can mess up the claim. I think that's what you said, Trevor. So we want to be careful to, the less is best in this case. Let's get it secure, make sure that the waters that is leaking has stopped coming in, and that's treated, and then clean up and dry out.
The other thing to note, yeah, you're absolutely right, Kip. If your church is wanting, or if you have members of your church that are wanting to help in some way, but they're not physically able to work inside a home, they can sign up through Crisis Cleanup to be a dispatcher. As more calls come in to the crisis hotline, they need more people to answer the phone, and that's done by volunteers. So that is also a way that you can participate in assisting. Your congregation can assist in the response to your area.
Right. Any other questions? Bishop, I'm going to call upon you to close us out here in a minute, but I'm going to ask Godfrey if you are willing to kind of stick around, and I'm going to pull together a brand new webinar for the two of us to do a little 5-minute thing. And Sonia, you may want to be available with your slides on that, to just do a 5-minute recap of how to get help, how to give help, how to give donations.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Bishop?
Well, I want to say thank you to Godfrey, Sonia, and Trevor for bringing your expertise to bear for this. For all of you all who are pastors or lay people leading in local churches, thank you for what you're doing. We want to be the hands and feet of Christ, and we want to do it in a way. And Godfrey, I couldn't unmute quickly enough, but you're right. John Wesley's general rules included do no harm, avoid evil. And so when we are doing our help smart, that's a good way of doing it. Let me close with a prayer, then we'll dismiss everybody else. But I guess Kip, you and Godfrey and Sonia are going to continue on to do a short version of this webinar.
We'll get on a brand new one and record it and upload it on our website.
All right, let's pray. God, thank you for the ways in which you're working through our church, through so many dedicated people. Give us wisdom, give us courage. Help us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. All this we ask in Jesus' name, and all God's people said, amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you.